All right, so it's going live. We're trying to do something here.
No problem. No problem.
It's streaming live.
Ah, is it on the right page? Yay, we're live. Hey guys.
Just want to say hello to all of our followers out there. I know all of you tune in every Thursday night to hang out with us, talk about
Taco
the exciting
Thursday.
world of Taco Thursday, to talk about the exciting world of FAFSA.
Yep, indeed. Indeed. So it's good to see everybody tonight. Jade, I think you're on screen with us. You're going to hang out with us?
Good to see you, Jade.
Jade's our tech behind the scenes. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. And she just took herself out of the picture.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jade Andrews. I am a financial aid counselor. I also serve behind the scenes, answering your questions, all of that good stuff. So if you do have questions today, definitely drop those in the comment section. I will answer most of them. And if they are very important and pertinent to our live stream tonight, then I will defer those to the experts here. Nice to meet y'all.
Just know it takes a village to run all of this. So.
Definitely. So our returning panelists, our returning panel of experts is here tonight. I'm Deborah Slade, Assistant Director for Outreach, and we have the doctor is in.
My name is Chris Ratliff. I'm the Assistant Director for Federal Processing for the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And below.
I am Lauren Pacheco, Verification Counselor at Financial Aid Office, UNC Greensboro, working with Chris.
All right. Excellent. So we have we have an exciting topic to talk about
I've been
tonight.
waiting all day for this.
We have been chomping at the bit. We've been so excited to get to this one because this is one of those things that can really make your processing either go very smoothly or not so smoothly. And then you get caught up in some of these things, you know, it can really cause you a lot of stress. And we want to alleviate that for you tonight. And we want to start talking about the Data Retrieval Tool. I know you've heard of it, or hopefully you have. That's a process within the FAFSA that allows you to transfer your tax information into from the IRS. We're also going to talk about verification, and that's what happens when your file gets randomly selected to verify the information that you've completed on the FAFSA. And then we're going to talk about special circumstances. So I've got a couple of slides that I'm going to attempt to share here. And what we're going to do is just kind of go through this a little bit. And as usual, you know, we'll be talking about these things. And if you have questions as you see something on the screen that you know sparks your imagination or you know makes you want to ask a question, please do that so that Jay can have something to do.
And this is designed as a discussion more than a presentation. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, go ahead and let us know what's on your mind. And here again, if your question does not pertain to what we're talking about, that's okay too. Go ahead and put your question in. We don't want you to leave this session with unanswered question or with anxieties or with concerns. We want to make sure we're addressing everything. So even if it's not shown on the screen, ask us, we will definitely answer it for you. Okay, so we're talking about something here, since I can get the screen to advance. Okay. Data retrieval tool, verification, and special circumstances. So,
yeah, you know how the government makes a lot of changes, and most of the changes result in something negative, right? Every time they make, well, in my experience, every time they made a change to anything, it either meant you had to do more work, or it was more expensive, or it didn't make any sense. Well, we as financial aid world have been asking for years for the federal government to do this one thing for us. And that was, hey, if these people are logging into a federal website, can they access the IRS as a federal website too? And believe it or not, the IRS agreed to it, and the Department of Education agreed to it, and they finally came together and said, yes, we have seen enough people make mistakes on their FAFSA by entering the incorrect information on their FAFSA from their taxes, which is the bulk of the FAFSA. So why not, if we have their name, their social, and their information, why can't we securely move all this information from the IRS right into the data points of the FAFSA where they belong? And then now you don't even have to do, half of the FAFSA to enter it. So that is what the IRS DRT means. And on a slide here in a minute, we'll go over what all that definitions for that acronym is. But what we're going to go over tonight is the why to use it, who can use it. Not everybody can use this function, and then why you can't use it in those circumstances. So Deborah, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll go into a little bit of the definition of what in the world are we talking about. All right, so here you go, another nifty flow chart to go through about transferring your tax information. Now, if you didn't file taxes for the upcoming FAFSA 2021 to 2022, will be your 2019 taxes. If you didn't file 2019 taxes last year, then you can't use this, and there's no reason to transfer anything, as it would be all zero. So you would answer that accordingly. But if you did, and you don't know all the line numbers and what exactly from your taxes goes onto the FAFSA, then this is a really quick and easy way of transferring it. So right there, you can see the first little bullet point there is easy transfer info with the click of a button. We're going to leave it here for a little bit because I know there's a lot to digest on this form, and we'll just kind of discuss the main points of it.
Can I make one point real quick too,
yeah,
before we move on? So just a quick note as well. A lot of students calling about their parents as well, they say, I can't provide my tax information. I didn't file taxes. And it's like, you just gave the answer right there. So when you're doing the FAFSA, it'll ask if you filed taxes, and you can just say no. And again, we're talking about the situation where you have and you're pulling in that data, but know that people who do not earn income or don't earn enough income to file taxes, when it comes to doing the FAFSA, it'll ask you, did you file taxes? So you're still providing the information. The answer just happens to be no. If you worked, you'll still provide info about that. But just a side note, it comes up fairly often that we get that call of, I can't provide that tax data, or maybe they say I couldn't use the data retrieval tool, but really they hadn't filed, and they would just answer, no, I haven't filed taxes.
Now, a trick of the trade is if you do use this IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA, the likelihood of you being selected for verification goes way down. As they're saying that most of the information from the FAFSA is from taxes and income. And so that cuts your chances of having to submit some additional documentation later on in the next couple months back to the Financial Aid Office. So, maybe it's a little inconvenient now to go through all the steps. That'll save you a lot of time and problems later on. We will show a little bit of the screenshots here in a little bit as you're walking through those steps of transferring your information. But just know this is the preferred method from FAFSA, and this is the preferred method from all the financial aid offices. We are all in agreement that this is a good idea and a good thing.
Chris, did we talk about, and sorry for that, I was doing some tech stuff in the back. Did we talk about what you see when you actually transfer that information in?
No, I haven't talked about it.
Okay,
no.
so can you see the slides?
Yeah, let's go.
So looking at this, oh, sorry, Deborah.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna, run that down again. So another, reason people are using the IRS data retrieval tool, and again, when you're doing it on the FAFSA, so what this slide is talking about is that it does protect your privacy in that way. So just like you mentioned, do you see what it populates? It'll blank out some information, because as you're completing the FAFSA and clicking through, it'll tell you if it successfully transferred that data in. It'll say IRS retrieved that data, but but it won't display it on the screen. So if you're at a FAFSA filing workshop, or, in a public library or some, setting where you might not want your personal information from the IRS to display itself, it'll tell you it's working and that it brought in info without showing you that data. So don't be alarmed if you see like it grayed out, or that kind of thing, because the point is that it's retrieving it directly. You shouldn't have to type something in. And as it says there, it'll say transferred from the IRS in those fields. And it also mentions too there that the receipt that you get of doing the FAFSA in your confirmation email, called the Student Aid Report, or SAR, that will also not repeat your tax info. So if you get a mailed student aid report or an emailed student aid report, it's aware that that's sensitive data, and it's not something that'll just get printed out and sent or emailed to you or something like that. So the IRS and the Department of Ed worked together to make sure it was private and secure, and it's gotten more and more secure over the time that it's been available.
And that was a huge push by the IRS. They wanted to make sure that this IRS data was completely masked and kept, which is a good thing, as we said before. One of the common,
if you're a teacher or counselor,
yeah, or anyone in the financial aid office, you don't even have to bring the papers in. You're just transferring it directly. Lauren would agree with me too. What we find a lot of times with the mistakes of you manually entering your tax information into the FAFSA is sometimes people will put, let's say I make $30,000 and I want to put the decimal points in there, and I put 30,000 ... Well, now I'm making, 300,000. And FAFSA was like, great.
Comma in the wrong place. They add decimals. It's dangerous.
Yeah, and FAFSA was like, great, you make $300,000, and then you must be able to afford a lot more for college. And it doesn't know any different and moves on. Where you're like, I don't know why my financial aid looks so strange. And then we go, well, did you make $300,000 last year? It's like, no, I made 30,000. So right there is a mistake that FAFSA wouldn't have picked up on. People make $300,000, but with the DRT tool, you're removing all of that errors.
Yeah, we have seen it in the millions. So those zeros count, those decimals count. One simple mistake, if this can prevent it, it's one reason to use it for sure. We've seen it all.
And another mistake we see quite a bit too is when the parent is completing the FAFSA for their student, they get to the student income side and they'll input the parent's income again on the student's side. So it shows that the parent made $30,000, and guess what? The student made $30,000 too. FAFSA was like, really good for y'all. Y'all made a lot of money in 2019, and then it moves on. But until we realize a little bit later that you just entered your information in twice. All right, we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Here's what you're going to be seeing a little bit on your side. It's really just to show you what you're looking at and what you expect to see. And you can see the blue button down at the bottom, the link to the IRS button. So they put it out there so everybody can see it.
And notice how it says parent, for example. So if you're on student, if you're on parent, it'll identify who they're asking for at that time, who's trying to use this tool. So be mindful of that throughout the FAFSA, student and parent. It'll address what those questions are related to or whose tax info they're asking for at that point in the application.
And for anybody that's new with us tonight, we pause a little bit because we know that you may come back and watch this a little bit later on. So we're just leaving the screen up so you can look at it and treat this more as a discussion more than a PowerPoint. Lauren, you want to take Jay's question there?
Yes. Okay. So we've got the question. So if you've manually entered information on the FAFSA that's complete, it says, will we need to submit additional information other than the student aid report, either with the application or once accepted? Okay, let me get into that a little bit. So it sounds like you're asking if you've input your information without using the IRS tool. And then you get a confirmation that your FAFSA was processed and you get the receipt of that or the result student aid report. Will you need to submit additional information? That depends. So I hope I'm interpreting the question correctly, but if you've typed in your—
I think so.
Okay. So yeah, I'll answer it in two ways, kind of. So if you've typed in your information and you didn't use the data retrieval tool from the IRS and you think, maybe I should use that and I just skipped over it, you would wait until that FAFSA processes, and then you can go back to the website, fafsa.gov, and log in and make corrections and use that IRS tool, and we'll get a new record of that FAFSA with the IRS data. So having completed the FAFSA, whether you think it's because you've typed in a mistake, and again, it won't always be smart enough to know, like Chris said, you could type in that you made $300,000 because it's a self-reported answer and it'll just move on. So if you submitted something and then you think it would be more accurate to go back in and for some reason you didn't use the data retrieval tool and you are able to, then you can make a correction to use the data retrieval tool so that we get a more accurate FAFSA filing. We don't recommend going and making changes. You know, if you have income changes, you should call the school, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But if you think you've made a mistake, you can call us to talk about it. Or if, again, you believe you can use the IRS tool to make your data more accurate, then we always encourage doing that. And you can do another correction, even if you've submitted the FAFSA.
In the financial aid world, we always have this saying, well, it depends, right?
Right.
I know
Yeah.
Deborah uses that one quite a bit, but we all should have t-shirts that says, ask me any question you want to, and my answer is probably going to be, it depends.
Right. Well, and the second part of that question too, that I didn't want to ignore is the student aid report. Will we have to submit additional information? So you can review your student aid report and it'll tell you if you've missed a question that needs to be answered, but it let it process and go through where you do have to make a correction and log back in. That might not always relate to this tax info or data retrieval, could be a different question on there, but review the student aid report to see if it tells you specifically, go make this change and resubmit it. So again, it does depend, but a couple opportunities to make corrections if it needs to, and the student aid report will try to report what it does recognize needs to be updated.
If you have to submit something, as soon as you submit that FAFSA and get that student aid report, it's going to tell you whether there's some additional documentation that needs to be submitted. It may not tell you exactly what that documentation is, but it'll give you some sort of feedback of, hey, the school will be contacting you asking for some additional documentation, or that your FAFSA was rejected because of these reasons, 1, 2, 3. So yeah, you get instant feedback from FAFSA once it's submitted. All right, Deborah, next slide, please. But great question. All right, so to transfer this, you have to leave the FAFSA technically and go to the IRS website to move this information. And that's what you're seeing there. What we find a lot of times is people think that they do the data retrieval when they get halfway through these steps and then they cancel somewhere in the middle. And it'll say that it tells us on our side that the data retrieval was attempted but not transferred. So you make sure you click all the way through it until you get some sort of confirmation that it's been transferred. And here is you agreeing to going to the IRS website. I'm agreeing to leaving the FAFSA and going to the IRS website.
Oh yeah, so it's pretty, do you mind if I speak on this one, Chris?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I love this person's name. That's
Yeah, first, last. I wonder what their middle name is, but I can kind of infer. But they happen to be from Coralville? Okay. Anyway, so, oh, there's the dog barking. Oh goodness. Okay, so this is.
There it is.
There it is. We are live. Hold on one sec. So what I wanted to mention on this page before I go on mute is that it'll ask you to put in your information in those fields. It'll look just like this, but one important note that I always make, and I always made it as a counselor helping students file, is that the street address, when you enter it, they want the address that would have matched the IRS tax filing. So if you live, if you have your tax info with you, that's still helpful. And you still want to use the data retrieval tool because it's going to pull it in accurately and reduce those reduce that room for error of, typing stuff in or having a miskey. But street address, you want to, again, if you abbreviate DR for Oakdale Drive, DR, type it the way it looks on the taxes. And if it doesn't work, try again and try to, think, well, did I abbreviate it or do I, put the apartment number in there, you know, that kind of thing. So having your taxes available to you is still always a good thing because you're supposed to retain copies of your tax filings. Even if you're going to use this tool to make sure that your FAFSA is accurate and pulling it from the IRS. But just to note, when you're telling the IRS website how to find you, it really wants that street address to look just like it does on your taxes.
Great bit of advice. And you can see there where it says must match your 2019 federal tax return. So they understand this is a big.
I've sat there with students and families and be like, I have a trick. And it's not really a trick. It's like, let's just do it again. And like, do you think that it looks like this? Or did you put a period there? Or, you know, like that kind of thing. We've gotten it to work. So if it doesn't work, take a deep breath, think if you abbreviated anything. And it most likely, you know, again, it's just wanting to match that exactly.
And here's where most people don't finish the process. I believe we don't get to see a lot of people do the FAFSA, but you can see it right there. Thank you, Deborah. There's your key. Transfer now. I don't know why you would not transfer it, other than the IRS is just really trying to protect you, and you can finally say, no, I don't want to do this. Between all of us, the IRS and FAFSA don't get along very well. So.
But it looks like a summary. It looks like a confirmation page. It looks like uniform. You know, it doesn't stand out that you really need to click that button to tell it like, yes, transfer my data. You've found it and I'm agreeing to this.
Good point. It looks like a confirmation page.
Right. People miss it all the time.
All right, so now you're done, and it takes you back to where you left off. So you finished up the parent page, and now it's gone on the student page. This is the independent right here, right, Deborah? Is that?
Yes, this is correct. This is the examples that I had did not follow through with the parent information, but the outcome is exactly the same. And what we wanted to highlight in this particular example is, as Lauren mentioned at the beginning, when you complete the transaction or the transfer of the IRS data into your FAFSA, here, where if you had typed in the adjusted gross income, you would see a number. But instead, the transfer was successful, so you're seeing transferred from the IRS instead of the adjusted gross income. And again, I just wanted to put those examples in here, just point that out, so that people don't get frightened when they see that. They're like, well, wait a minute, where's the information? Just again, as a reminder, so that you'll know what it looks like, that you will see that notation that it's transferred from the IRS. So again, that tells you that it was a successful transfer.
And it takes some, I mean, you have to have your thinking cap on the whole time you're doing the FAFSA, because you don't want to miss something or make a mistake. But if you can get through that first part, again, just seeing, okay, transferred from the IRS, you know, it kind of validates that a little bit, that I did that work already. Okay, well, don't miss the things it's asking, but, you know, reviewing things that one step took care of a few steps for you, it's always a good thing.
And usually FAFSA knowledge is, if it asks you a question that you have no idea what it's talking about, it's probably no or zero. It doesn't know your situation, so it's going to ask you a lot of different things, like, did you file an IRS Schedule K1 Form 1065 from 2019? You're like, I have no idea what that is, never heard of that before. It's probably no. But people that do file these things will be like, oh yeah, I have a K1, you know. Don't be intimidated by that. I don't have a K1. So.
I don't have that either.
Right, there's another confirmation. As of today, are you a dislocated worker? Once again, one of those things where I have no idea what that is, but some people are dislocated workers. If you want to know what that definition is, you can click on that blue button right there and it'll tell you exactly.
Right, the question mark helps, but yeah, usually when they use these terms and they seem foreign, it can, like Chris said, be intimidating, but it really just means it's probably not something that applies to you if you haven't been referred to with that term. Or filed your taxes and seen that term.
Yeah, this screen actually shows why it's, again, a good idea to use a data retrieval tool, because here it's answering some of these questions that you might not know where to look on your tax return to find that. But using the data retrieval tool, it will pull that in for you. And then you don't have to worry about putting in the wrong tax exempt information or the wrong
and you can know
education
it's
tax
accurate.
credit.
The
Mhm.
FAFSA knows it's accurate. The school knows it's accurate. So there's no question there. All right, so maybe some last points on the data retrieval. As you can see, it will lower your chances of being selected for a FAFSA verification. It's easier for you, so you don't enter some information that is inaccurate and changes your financial aid to the negative. Also, it's a tool that speeds up the FAFSA process, so you can get done a little quicker, and that makes everybody happy. So verification. So real brief, I'll go over what is verification. All right, I'll zoom back a little bit. So the federal government's going to say, hey, we're going to give people federal funds based on a self-reported application. It means, nobody's verifying this application. You can put whatever information you want to on there, but the data retrieval helps with getting information accurate. But if we're going to give all of these people money, and as you can imagine across the country, it's millions of dollars, there's got to be some sort of checks. You got to be able to look at this stuff. You got to be able to verify, is this thing working? Is it right? Are people submitting and putting in accurate information? And so they have a algorithm robot that looks at all the FAFSA information and common mistakes. So out of all the years of verification that schools have been doing this, we've been giving feedback to the federal government about what common mistakes are or what things go wrong and all of that. So they've now put this in some mathematical robot that looks at FAFSAs and finds common mistakes. A lot of common mistakes come from tax information, so that's why the IRS DRT lowers that chance. They try to shoot for a 30% verification range. So 30% of FAFSAs being filed are being selected for verification. So that satisfies the other part of it is if we're going to give out millions of dollars, well, 30% of these we're checking to see what the changes are going to be. I do want to say these things as we all have been doing this a long time. At no point does it think that you're doing something wrong or criminal. As I said, it's selecting and trying to find patterns of most common mistakes. It's not trying to verify you or be intrusive in you and your family situation based on any other information other than you're probably in a group of high probability of mistakes. And none of the information that a school is going to ask for is going to be outside of what was reported on the FAFSA. And what I mean by that is there's nothing the school is going to ask from you and your parents that you didn't use or would have used to complete the FAFSA. So we're not trying to be inclusive in your family situation. We're just trying to verify each line of the FAFSA was correctly submitted. So that's what verification is. The burden falls onto the school that you choose to go to. So when you complete your FAFSA and you have your student aid report there in front of you, it's going to say whether or not you were selected for verification. You were selected for verification, the school will now be contacting you, and because you signed that FAFSA, you have agreed to submit these documents to the school. Failure to submit these documents or complete verification means you do not get financial aid at that school. The federal government doesn't release that financial aid to the school to allow the school to give you that financial aid. So we are the ones who get to help guide you through that process. I don't ever want you to think that the school is asking for this stuff because they want to know it. It's the federal government is flagging your FAFSA for this type of verification. All right, while I was selected, that goes into the 30% group. I would say that in all of my experience, and I'm sure Deborah and Lauren will agree on this, is we find most of the mistakes are hurting the student more than helping the student. And what I mean by that is you would think that there's a subset of people out there that's just trying to fake these numbers and to get more financial aid. Well, this kind of helps with that as you have to verify the information. But most of the time, we are changing the FAFSA information to favor the student. Oh, what do you mean you didn't make $300,000? You only made $30,000? Well, that really changes the calculation of FAFSA. So don't see this as something as bad. It's in my experience, and you guys can speak on your own. In my experience, it's really more helping the students than hurting the students.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. It's usually that is usually the case. That the mistakes that we find are the mistakes that are preventing the student from getting the full amount of aid that they would have been eligible for, once we find the mistakes. So, and you've been doing this a long time, so yeah, you can speak on this as an expert.
Sure, sure,
30% of FAFSAs for as long as Chris has been doing it is a lot of verifications to complete.
It's stepping back in 2017 when they broke it and it went up to 40%. But I still haven't forgiven them for that. That was a long year for us.
It was a rough year.
So
Yeah,
if you're being selected, don't be shocked by all of this, and contact the school and the financial aid office, and they'll walk you through all of these situations. There's a document for everything, and we'll review the information. It does take a little bit of time because the busiest time of the year is when everybody's submitting these things for our office. So,
And let me speak on that, Chris, before you move off of that. Let me just, encourage people, since the FAFSA is being completed now in October and November, we'll start notifying students who need to submit additional documentation for verification once we start pulling in FAFSA data, and that should happen next month or so.
Next month, yep.
So you have time to do that without waiting to the last minute. So I just want to encourage you, when you get that email that says, hey, we need additional information to complete your file, go ahead and send it in. If you send it in December or January, we
can knock it out, yeah.
We can get it done and not have to worry about waiting through the summer to get things. I made this observation in another session I was doing, that we had a lot of people who were selected for verification last November, when we were going through that cycle.
And just know, me and Deborah watch these things. We know who you are. We know these dates.
We see the dates on when it gets flagged for verification.
Yeah.
When you get emails about it.
Exactly. And then, there is an opportunity, as I said, to get the information in, right away. We have students who were selected and, had to provide information. We notified them in November. And then when March and April rolled around, what was going on in March and April of 2020?
We were in lockdown in a pandemic.
Right.
Kind of just went off the rails.
As well as a lot of the federal and state offices who were not able to provide you with the information and the documentation that you needed to submit to the school, which had you done it a month earlier, you would have had it and we would have been done. We were still working. Now, we were the exception to the rule. We were still working. We were working.
But we're the middle person in all of this. So
right. So we were still working, but we could not do anything without the requested documents. So I just encourage you, right now, as you're completing your FAFSA, make a folder, make a file, even if it's an electronic file, put those documents, make copies or save an electronic copy of whatever document you're using to complete your FAFSA, so that in the event your file is selected for verification and you get the email that says, we need documents A, B, and C, you have documents A, B, and C, and you can go ahead and submit them in a timely manner. Your file is complete, your work processes, you're not caught up in that last minute mad rush. So this is my pitch for do it now, do it early. Okay.
Yeah, behind the scenes, us three handle all the FAFSAs and who files and when and what. So we have charts on these things, and we noticed that, most of our FAFSAs come in November. October, November, we get a huge chunk. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if we get most of our FAFSAs in at that time, most of them are going to be selected for verification. Of that 30% is going to come in sooner. So you've known for months. And as we hit June, July, and come into the summer and, starting school in August, that's when people's like, oh, I got to turn in something. Well, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks now. And then you're right. Last summer we had a pandemic shutdown. So all of that even got more delayed. So worst time to procrastinate is over this type of documents right here. Mm-hmm. What you'll need to submit will be copies of your tax returns or tax transcripts, who's in your household, who within the household's going to college, and maybe some other here and there questions about marriage and things like that. But it's very simple, and usually at its simplest, it's probably 3 documents, which is the worksheet, the student's income and tax, the parent income and tax, and that's it. So
And
it's
we
not-
send the worksheet, so it's not like
Yeah.
something you've got to go
Right.
find. So we
And
supply
there's
the worksheet.
instructions on it. There's some guidance for you, and we're always here if you have questions. So better not to know it's there and get notified that you have to do it, or it's, oh, I'll get to it, or I'm not sure what it means, but I'll get back to it. Be proactive. Call us if you don't know what it is, and we'll tell you how to do it. And it's all on there. But absolutely, we know we're the middleman in the situation too. So the school wants to get you the age you're eligible for, which means we want you to turn in the documents so that we can get it all figured out and done for you. So yeah, anyway.
And you can worry about going to school. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the
Right.
setup part of it. How long does it take? We're going to give you the general financial aid answer of it depends.
It depends.
This is a relationship we have between you and our office. So as you can get it to us, then we can work on it. How long is it going to take you to get it? How long is it going to take us to review it? Before summer, we can knock it out really quick. As we get closer to the first day of school, these things start backing up to 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then now your bill's due. Understand that the university or whatever university you're going to, that cashier's office does not care what you're doing with your financial aid. That when that bill is due, that bill is due. And you can be like, oh, no, I've turned in my stuff to financial aid. We'll just wait for them to review it. And they're like, well, this bill's been out here for months. It's due tomorrow. And that's the hard line of that. So procrastination will shorten your college life really quickly. So
right. And
anything you want to add,
of,
Lauren, on these bullet points?
Well, just a note that 30% is a few thousand students at our school. So if you imagine a few thousand students turning in all the paperwork that you could have been on top of the game for in July, and school starts, in mid-August, that's again a few thousand people where we in this small office have to, work through and get this.
You're looking at them. Here's the two people that take care of this.
So it can't get more personal than this of an appeal to, keep on that train, especially for first-time freshmen and parents. I know that you've been through the admissions cycle, you've prepped all of your materials for that, you've gathered all of your personal info and data. This is another subset of that, and we hope you don't get flagged for verification. 30% isn't everybody. Hopefully using the data retrieval tool can reduce your chances of being selected for it, but being prepared, knowing if you filed taxes, keeping your documents that relate to your taxes and your wages, so your W-2s, all these things regular in your life as you move through adulthood will help you. So again, that's just my soapbox for that. Is financial aid is no different. You have to stay organized, be proactive, keep your files in order, and if it comes, that way you can help the process move that much more smoothly. So that's my 2 cents.
And the reason they're using 2019 taxes is so you can do this application so much earlier in the year before you have to file your 2020 taxes.
Right.
And what that means is in their research, now they've done a lot of stats with this, is that a family's income doesn't really change that much. I'm not saying it doesn't change at all. It doesn't change that much between a 2-year span. So what they did was, if we go back another year, so for the 2021, 2022 FAFSA, you already have filed your 2019 taxes. You will have those in your hand October 1st. For all of the old timers out there, it used to be a lot later in the year. And then you would have to kind of guesstimate on your taxes for that current year to put on your FAFSA. And that was a train wreck of misinformation. So what they said was, well, if we go back and say that you use your previous year's taxes on your FAFSA, that data was probably more accurate and you would have it on hand. The IRS already has it and you can do it really quickly. So that's, I know it's odd to say, well, it's 2020. You want me to use the taxes that I did last year. That doesn't accurately reflect what's going on. I know that doesn't make sense. Nowhere else do you, I think you use a prior year. But that's the reason behind that.
And often, just as a side note for that too, is like like Chris said, we understand that families do have changes. And again, like when you look at it in the bigger picture, it's what is the weight on this application of those changes is often kind of the sticking point. So it'd be like, well, I made, a little bit less money on this tax year, that I'm waiting to do, but maybe you have a student leaving college and one going. So the FAFSA is looking at all these pieces together. It's looking at the income, marital changes, students or children you have in your household, how many of those are in college. So with all those pieces moving, it can be a little frustrating trying to anticipate, like, well, what does this FAFSA want? What is it looking at? And I've had these changes, but because it looks at all of it, this change might weigh one way or the other and balance with another change that you have. So we are going to talk about when you do have special circumstances, and we know that everybody does have, a unique set of circumstances. It's just that the FAFSA asks about a lot in your life, and often these changes do balance out. But this next point is for when there are bigger stuff going, bigger things going on and really something drastic going on.
So Lauren, what are the top reasons you would see a family make a change to a FAFSA or need to make a change to a FAFSA?
So this is in a circumstance where you've already done the FAFSA, it's completed, and then you've had a change. So the biggest ones that Chris and I see coming in are loss of employment. So parent lost their job. This time could especially become more common, unfortunately. So job loss, AKA big changes to income, parent separation or student separation, your marital status changes after you filed the FAFSA. So maybe when it looks at 2019 taxes, I was married, I was filing joint with them, and we're separated. I filed my FAFSA a month ago. So big changes to marital status is another large, expected change that you would have in your ability to pay for school if you're used to a dual income, and then that becomes single for either yourself or, as an independent student or your parents. So that's another big change. So I filed my FAFSA, my parents got separated, or unfortunately, death of a parent. So that's just another example where, it's something unexpected. It's very different. That taxes is, from a year ago is not going to explain a whole person missing from that equation income wise. So those are the big three. So unemployment, marital status change, and death of a parent or death of a spouse.
The term that we use for that is professional judgment. And most schools use this to really help out their families and their students who are meeting these extenuating circumstances with their financial aid. Offices will normally review any circumstance you want them to look at, but understand that only thing that we can change are those data elements on the FAFSA. So we do have families, and we feel their pain when they talk about medical expenses, or my parents have to pay this extra expense because of whatever situation, and you've heard it with other families, but your expenses are not reported on the FAFSA. The FAFSA is household information and tax information. So for your family having to pay out on this, whatever that is expense, there's nothing that I can adjust on the FAFSA to make that change. Now, if let's say like separation and your mom and dad separate and we have to take out one of their incomes because that person's no longer in the household. So that's a tax thing and a household thing. And then that recalculates your FAFSA based on that. But that's FAFSA giving the school the right to make those changes to an already correct FAFSA, if that makes sense. As you've submitted.
At the time, right? At the time you filed, it was accurate to your situation. Mm-hmm.
So Lauren, what if I put my mom and dad on my FAFSA, but my mom and dad have been separated for 3 years? I just put them on the FAFSA because they're my mom and dad.
Well, if you're flagged for verification, hopefully we'll ask for documentation to get to the bottom of it. But that's something that we can correct, so you might be confused about how to be answering that question. So if your parents separated 3 years ago, if they live together, you should report their information together. But if they don't live together, we need to determine which parent should be used on that FAFSA. So who did you live with more in the past 12 months?
Or I live with my mom.
Yeah. Right. So mom should be the parent on the FAFSA. If mom isn't remarried, it would be mom's income information, the student's income information, and we can help to correct that. So if you feel like you've made a mistake with that and you've already submitted the FAFSA where it might think it's correct because it doesn't know any better, especially if you're a new student, again, we don't have any previous FAFSAs on file maybe that would say, oh, this said your mom has, been divorced since 2005, and now there's mom and dad on there, with a different date. it's not smart enough to catch those things. So you can always contact the school, and you might be thinking, oh, this is a special circumstance. My parents are separated. But once we get the information, we check that date on it. It's like, oh, they should have just put that in the beginning that they had been separated at the time of filing the FAFSA. So in professional judgment, that's also our duty, is to determine what are we making changes to based on these special new circumstances, or what can we help you fix as a correction with the Department of Ed.
For parents who are separated after the FAFSA was filed, the type of documentation that we're going to ask for is, if we're going to make a change to the FAFSA, if we're going to say, hey, Department of Education, we're going to make these changes based on the information we've received, we have to document it. Understand, anything to do with this federal funds is we have to document this information. So if your parents have separated after the FAFSA was filed, we're going to have to ask for some documentation to prove that separation. That may be separate addresses. My dad's home address is 123 North Street. My mom's address is 123 East Street. And then, okay, so we can show the documentation there. We'd also have statements from your parents saying, hey, you know what, we separated on June 12th of this year, and that's the separation date that we can use for the FAFSA to make the professional judgment. If your parent has deceased after you filed the FAFSA, there's birth certificates and death certificates involved with that. So as you can see, that any change or anything that's verified on the FAFSA, there's a document for it. So don't feel offended at all if we start asking for these additional documentation. We're just trying to document our changes, so if we're ever audited on that situation, the file looks good.
Right, because ultimately an audit comes down to our ability to give students the aid they're eligible for by working through the what's called Title IV aid program with the federal government. So it's not just, oh, we don't want to be audited. It's, we need to make sure that we're doing all these processes correctly so that you can keep your aid and that we can keep providing it as, the financial aid office at UNCG should be. So it's very important that we comply, and that, your willingness to provide that documentation to help us make those changes is all the more appreciated because of that. So if you don't know what to turn in, we'll, look at your circumstance. If you write and sign a statement for us to have on file, we'll read through it and work with a committee to determine what documentation we need to ask from you. So we can get started that way too, if you're not always sure, like, well, I have that exact thing, but it can be a little daunting, but we'll guide you through the process.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're getting kind of close. I think we got about 15 more minutes.
I'm going to stop sharing for just a bit and come back. We got a couple of other informational slides left, but we can put those up later. I don't see that we have any additional questions coming in, but I just want us to, to again be mindful that as Lauren stated, when we're talking about special circumstances and professional judgment, that it's, if you make a mistake on the FAFSA and you catch it, definitely let us know so we can help you work through that and make sure that you have the correct information process, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity. We definitely know that, mistakes happen, no shame in that, but that's what we're here for.
And family situations are very private too. I get that point too, but
Yeah.
we're not here to judge on any of that. We're trying to get you financial aid.
Yes, exactly. And we don't pass any judgment. Yeah. I mean,
It's just us. as we mentioned before, it's just us, and we're hoping to help you. And
yeah.
it's our job to keep your information safe and secure and private, so if you're sharing that info and we need to help you facilitate it, that's our goal. There's no judgment here.
Deborah, do you want to give, we got a couple minutes, you just want to give some good financial aid advice? We maybe pick 3 things and we'll get on our soapbox about it.
Well, my big thing is please do it early. File early, file early, file early. And that gives you such a head start in getting your file complete, making sure you have your financial aid in place. And we'll talk about a little bit of the processing timeline as far as the FAFSA, but just know that if you are, if this is your first time filer, you're a first year student, and you're coming into a school and you're trying to make some comparisons, it's hard to compare things if you haven't completed the process. And you don't want to be waiting until the last minute to try to figure out, am I going to be able to afford this? Or, what other resources will I need to compile and to go along with what I've been offered from the school? So it's vitally important to just, follow through, read all of the instructions, read, file early. That's number one. Read the instructions, because we, as well as other schools, and we understand that you may not, there may be students who are watching who may be considering other schools, and that's fine. Our goal is to make sure you understand how the process works so that you can go through it smoothly. And as I said before, because the information came from UNCG, you're going to naturally come back to us because we were good, we were helpful. So yes. But yeah, file early, read everything, and then ask questions.
And if you don't know, I think a lot of people don't file early because they haven't decided, I don't know what school I'm going to go to yet.
Yeah, definitely.
And it makes
don't do that.
FAFSA has an answer for that. You put every school you're thinking about going to on there. You can put 10 schools on there.
Of the 10 schools on the FAFSA, so put them all on there.
Put your Harvard on there, put everybody.
And it doesn't cost
Make
you
your life
anything.
easier for all 10 of those schools to try to tell you how much aid they can give you. If you want to be admitted to 10 schools and figure it out, then that FAFSA going through for each of them is going to help that decision.
I can't think of one good reason why you would not want to do the FAFSA early. It's easier. You have the information. Can you think of one? I mean, I would say marriage, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
No, we won't go down.
I'm a former procrastinator, I would say. I've learned my lesson now that I'm a grown person. Not that people entering college aren't grown people, but as a chronic procrastinator, I have learned that that defeated feeling of either I'm not going to get any aid from it, that might be one thing, and then being convinced to do it, or just not wanting to deal with it and knowing there's not a hard deadline. But like, this is the one circumstance where a priority date could mean the difference between getting a need-based scholarship and not, just based on availability. So whether you're a procrastinator or not, don't let the FAFSA be something you procrastinate on. And again, it's a complicated calculation that determines really what you can get from a lot of different sources, but that's the nature of it. It's been made simpler
and by no means is it perfect. I mean, it's not a perfect calculation.
Right. Yeah. It's one application, but for a lot of different types of aid and different things that schools are going to look at for you. So just make sure to get it done, and it's going to do a lot of the work for you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lauren, to really highlight, is that the FAFSA is basically the entry point for financial aid for both federal, but it's definitely required for federal. You have to complete it in order to be eligible for federal aid. A lot of state programs use the FAFSA as their entry point and to determine aid eligibility for their state funds. And definitely colleges use that information to determine who's going to be able to get their college money. Now, some colleges use the FAFSA in addition to the CSS profile. I was about to say CFNC, the CSS profile. So I know. So check with your school to see if that's an application that's going to be required. Now, UNCG only uses the FAFSA. We don't need the profile. So that's not something that you need to be concerned about completing for our school. But if you are considering other schools, and I'm not saying that you should, I'm just saying that if you're, okay. Anyway, sorry, I'm just a tad biased. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit biased.
We know who's out here doing this.
I had one more thing to say about it though too, because again, this is looking at financial need mostly. And I know I said like a lot of people might be approaching it like, well, I don't think I'll get anything. Sometimes I'll get that person on the phone later though. And they're like, well, where's my loan offer though? Like we make $500,000 a year, but like we still wanted to use a student loan with the low interest rate from the federal government. And I'm like, you have to do a FAFSA to be offered federal aid. Aid includes federal loans, whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized, and, again, getting into all the types that, FAFSA helps federal, state, schools, private, scholarships like Say Yes looks at your FAFSA information for Guilford County students and all of that. A lot of people don't realize you also need to complete a FAFSA if, again, it would be great if you filed early and you still have financial need based on their definition and you can get something, but I have had that phone call where they're like, well, we're not going to get anything, but where's my loan offer? You're like, that's what the FAFSA was for. So always do it to see if at least, you know what you're working with, and that includes federal loans. Again,
And it's a free application, so it didn't really,
absolutely.
it took 20 minutes of your time. Yeah, it took 20 minutes of your
right.
time to go all through these different levels of people that use this information, which is awesome because it's a one-stop shop for a lot of schools.
Right.
My talking points here as we're getting close is early bird gets the worm. That's going to be true in everything you do in college, from admissions to financial aid. The second part of that is going to be don't be afraid to let your intentions be known. So if there's something you want to do or want to know about, ask people. You're on a college campus of people that are experts in all of these little slices of the pie. And the last part is to ask questions. Our office, whether you're in school or not, we are working 8 to 5 every day. And when the season's not busy for us, we're there to answer questions. You can email, you can chat. We have this wonderful chat bot that's open 24 hours a day that you can ask questions into. Deborah's bringing up a slide here about expected next steps. And because that's always what you want to know, like, all right, great, I've done my FAFSA, I'm going to do this or that. Like, what do I do now? Do I you just sit back and wait? What to expect? Yeah, it is a little bit of sit back and wait. Figuring out the FAFSA may not be the only step. For some families, they have to do an additional signature page, which FAFSA will tell you. There's the verification aspect of that. So before I can offer you financial aid or know how much aid you're going to be able to use, I'm going to need all of this information. Other things that's reported on the FAFSA other than tax information, citizenship, selective service. And then there's the student aid report. They mail it to you. I think you can also get a digital version.
Yeah, you can log into the FAFSA and view it as well. So it's available to you if you're like, well, did I get that in the mail or did I get that email? If you log back in, it'll be there for you to click on.
And then the special circumstances. And as I said, we will go over that in this session.
Yeah, that's my fault, Chris. I forgot to take that out. So,
well, it ends there. So there you go. Now for us, it takes us about a week to get your FAFSA. Now, right now, we haven't pulled any FAFSAs in for the new year. We'll start that by the end of the month, but then we start running on a weekly basis. So we don't get your FAFSA as soon as you submit it. Schools don't get your FAFSA as soon as they submit it. We have to request these files and then load these files into our computer software and then run them through some processes. And then now you get your information. So you'll submit it today. For our school, you won't hear anything back until first couple of weeks in November. You'll get an email or an award letter email from us that says that here's your financial aid that we can offer. Or you're going to get a tracking letter.
Let me step in here for a minute. For the November filers, we'll probably be sending out we need more information letters or emails in November. We actually won't start the awarding process until early spring.
So there you go. So there's
February,
a big gap.
Late February, early March is when you'll start getting the award notifications. There are lots of, in addition to getting everything set up in the system to receive the FAFSA data, we also have to wait for budgets for the next year for funding, for our program funding to know how much money we have available to offer students. And then we also have to wait, not just for our university funds or, institutional funds, but also for state funds. They go through a process of determining how much money is going to be available for state aid. And we need to wait till they complete that calculation and let us know what that's going to look like. And then they will be also using that FAFSA data to make the determination of how much those students are going to be getting. So the award notification, the actual award offer will come in spring after you've been admitted. So you have to be admitted first in order to get aid. So if you're a continuing student, you're already admitted. So now you're just waiting until March to get your award notification to let you know how much money you'll have available next year. But if you're a brand new student just entering for the first time or just applying to college for the first time, it's probably going to be early spring from UNCG. Now, other schools have different timelines, so you'll want to make sure you check in with them to see what their awarding timeline is. But you definitely can start looking for something from us in November. If you haven't submitted an admissions application and you're a first-time student, you will get, at the very least, you'll get an email saying, hey, here's how to log in to your Genie account. And that's our online portal for student information. Here's your not username, here's your UNCG ID, and here's instructions on setting up your PIN. And then you'll also get the email if we need additional information, if you've been selected for verification, or we need to follow up and verify your citizenship or select a service status. So sorry, Chris, I just wanted to make sure we
that's the whole purpose of this slide, is to explain to you a little bit about it. It isn't instantaneous, and it's not just done when you hit the submit button. It's, these things have to, kind of like dominoes, they have to fall all into place before you reach that.
Yeah. So let me put up our how to get a hold of us
and wait.
slide.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. That's how it should be. You should be hurrying up, and then you should be waiting. So
Exactly. Yeah.
how it goes. That's the cycle.
On us, put the burden on us to finish it. You get your stuff in, and then you wait for us to finish it. Don't have us waiting for you to send the stuff in, so then we can rush and get it done. So
Right.
this is how to get a hold of us. This is our contact information. Our phones are open 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. Visits to our office are by appointment only. So if you're a continuing student, you will use Starfish to schedule your appointments. If you are a prospective student, give us a call and our counselors will work with you in making sure you can get an appointment. It can be a virtual appointment or a face-to-face. And Chris talked about Minnie, our chat bot, and I think there she is. Although if you go to our website now, Minnie looks a little bit different.
Spooky.
Minnie has put on
Spooky.
she's put on her Halloween costume already.
I like spooky Minnie.
Minnie's ready to go trick-or-treating.
I might ask
Zombie
Minnie some
Minnie.
questions, because I just think she's so cute when she's spooky.
Yeah.
You're like, which
This
job
is the
on
hardest worker
FAFSA?
in our office right here. This is the hardest worker we got.
For real, she really is.
All
Minnie's
day, all night.
24/7, 365 days a year. She's always busy.
Except on leap year.
Oh my God, Chris.
366, yeah. Exactly.
I'm making sure we mention leap year on every one of these money matters.
You have to be, we are accurate people. We are detail-oriented, accurate people. So you're like, this is a lie.
It's a gift.
This is a robot. This isn't a real person, as you see #bot down there. But we real people set these questions up, and we monitor these questions. We edit these questions. We format these questions relevant to what time of the year it's going on. So we really monitor this. And if she can't answer it, she's going to give you an email. She emails us the chat, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
We have seen
Right
it.
into our office inbox.
We're open for in-office appointments, but I don't think there's anything that you must do in office that you can't do over the phone or an email or a chat. I mean, this is the world we live in now. Save yourself a trip. But sitting down with a person is not going to get you any more information than calling in or emailing a person. It's the same people, by the way, that you'll be meeting with.
Still
And,
us.
Our office is lucky enough to have full-time counselors. There's not a triage or any type of person who is screening, or you need to be transferred to somebody who's more of an expert. Our counselors are full-time counselors, and they have access to all of the experts in our office. So if you've got a question, they can answer it. And if they can't answer it, just give them a minute or two and they'll get you an answer. So here is, man, we're halfway.
Whoa.
This is our halfway date.
Yeah.
Oh, it really is. I mean, exactly halfway. Wow.
So I know
like
our
the
true
median number.
fans are going to be there to the end, but if any of y'all want to jump on the bandwagon and join us for the Money Matters FAFSA 101 on Thursday nights, the next one's going to be top FAFSA errors, which who doesn't like to fix errors? And then what's
nitpick
next?
them and tell you what not to mess up. No, to gain some clarity on those. So
we deal with the errors all day, so we have a good grasp on what not to do or where the stumbling blocks are for that. So there's our information there. I want to say
And
thank you very much, Deborah, for organizing all of this.
And don't forget, if you have a question between now and next session, there is a Google form, and hopefully Jay can find that link and put it in the chat, in the comment section for you again. But there is a Google form that you can just go ahead and put your question there, so that we'll have it when we come to the session. And that way, again, we can answer it. If you know that you're not going to be able to watch the session, but you can come back and watch the video, then your question can get answered, and you'll still have the benefit of having that posted. So yeah, go ahead and post that in there. And like I said, I think Jade is finding that link, and she'll get that posted up for you. So let me just stop sharing for a moment. And yeah, so any last minute or last thoughts or shares? We're just about down to the wire. We're down to our last minute here.
Deborah, appreciate you putting all this together. It's a huge benefit to the community as a whole.
Well, I wanted to make sure, we've been doing our FAFSA in-person workshops every year. We usually have either Monday night or a Tuesday night workshop on campus. And, we just weren't able to do that this year. So I thought we need to do something. And I'm so glad you guys decided to partner with me and come along and be my experts and help with this. So it's really been a great effort. So I'm happy that we were able to do this. So.
Lauren and I could talk about this all day.
Yes.
And we do. So
we do. And then sometimes on Taco Thursdays, I continue the conversation. I'm like, hey, did you ever think about this or that? XYZ Financial Aid, and my friends and my family and everybody I know is like, well, we didn't think about that. Thank you for telling us. So it's great to have a platform to talk about it where people need to know.
And people can come back and watch this tomorrow night. They don't have to miss a date or miss a time. So we can be with you forever.
Yeah. So thanks again for joining us. Have a good evening and take care. And we'll be here again next week, 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Jade.
Peace out. Thanks,
Yes,
Jade.
thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.